I guess I'm not as popular as Peter DeSantis. But, I am Peter Jackson. I am CEO of Bluescape, and I'm going to talk a little bit about a few things today, but mostly around collaboration. And I might go back 100 years just for fun. I was a history major. What do I like about collaboration? Some of the people here have heard this story before, but for some strange reason, I grew up about 20 yards from the Deaf and Blind School in Berkeley, California. And my mom was a teacher. You had to be blind and you had to be deaf to be her student. And we had about 10. And I spent most of my childhood in that classroom. And so these people couldn't speak, they couldn't see me, and I had to learn how to communicate with them through vibration. And I got to be pretty good friends with a lot of these kids, learning through touch and feel and that whole thing. So some of my roots around collaboration I didn't even know I was getting. And then from about 4th grade to 10th grade, I got moved to 5 different schools in Berkeley because they were experimenting with segregation, integration, busing. And all my friends moved out of the town because they thought it was a horrible idea, and my parents thought it was brilliant. And at the time, I didn't think it was a great idea, but it taught me about a lot of different people, a lot of different cultures, and I made a lot of friends, and I had to learn how to make new friends all the time and learn how to work with them. And my final story sort of came a little bit later. I played on 4 national championship rugby teams, and I can remember the first time I ever scored, I went about 50 yards and just ran by everybody and scored, and turned around figuring they'd pick me up and carry me around the field cheering. Not one person came to say anything to me. In fact, they all met at midfield and were jumping up and down, all excited. And I asked later this multinational team from people around the world that played on it, I said to them, how is it that I didn't get the love there? And they said, because rugby is about a team. It's about everybody working together, all 15 players in sync as an organization. And I didn't realize at the time that that would be along with me in the companies that I've run since 1985. I spoke in a stage near here in 1985 at Comdex, so I've been to Vegas a few times. I'm a little bit dated, so I'll try to stay current with you on collaboration. But let's start in 1913. Henry Ford is a unique guy. I find this shocking, but 50% of the US workforce, the Industrial Revolution, worked for Henry Ford. 50%. I found that stat staggering. And at first they were working 6 days a week, 9 hours a day. Henry Ford designed the 8 to 5. He decided to take their wage from $2.43 an hour to $5 an hour and have them work Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. It was the roots of factoring, and it was the roots of business, the Industrial Revolution, but it carried from Ford into all businesses in the 20s and 30s and through World War II. The concept was an organization that was under a roof, under management, getting things accomplished. That's what collaboration was. There wasn't much technology, and certainly by the 50s, that had not really changed much. 60% of the automobiles were made in Michigan. I think the statistic that really blew me away is that from 2010 to the end of the 20s, the population of Detroit alone went from 285,000 to 1.6 million. I think Dearborn went from 1,000 to 50,000. So this whole Silicon Valley that we talk about now that's disbanding around the world, the same thing sort of happened in the car market, and we've seen how that's changed recently. If you jump once again, like I said, to the 50s, about 32% of the workforce were women. A lot of them had started working during World War II. But it was all sort of like this picture. They were in a room, all typing on computers, and the executive offices around the perimeter were big glass windows so they could see that the people were working. African Americans had moved up to about a third of what a white person would make at the time. But for the most part, technology was about typewriters. Interesting story is typewriters went on into the 60s and 70s. That became the core mailing of communication. But businesses were centralized in cities. And hence we have a lot of these buildings that we all see in these big cities because they all grew out of this, let's take the Ford factory, turn it into a business, and let's run technology, if you will, there. If you sort of jump a little bit after that, we had what we call the mainframe, and then we had the minis. But that was all sort of in your data room inside of that building. And you had wiring run through those buildings to your hardline telephones, but also to securely create data. And most of the tools were like a finance tool. They weren't really spectacular. A lot of stuff was manual, all the way up into the 70s and early 80s. So jumping ahead, I mentioned the 80s. I was actually had a full-time job by 1984. I started in 1982. Talking about those typewriters, there was actually a product that had a daisy wheel inside it. It was a printer. It was round, and it would be A, B, C, D, all the way around like this. And they would put these things in offices because they wanted to give the electronic feel that somebody was actually typing it. I mean, as stupid as that sounds. 30 characters per second, and it sounded like a machine gun going on in the office. But that was a Diablo, it was a Xerox product, Diablo 630. And I literally was the #1 salesman in the country selling that product to insurance agents who wanted to give that look and feel of the indentation of the letter they got in the mail as if somebody had hand typed it. That's how important technology was then. The PC, Boca Raton, Florida, was designed by IBM to sell 250 units as a test, then 250,000 as a test. So the PC, the IBM PC, Jobs was kind of working on an educational thing called Apple, but the baseline of the PC was so that people could work from home. It was the first remote thing that they could do at home computing. And there was this one product out at the time called VisiCalc that was a really good accounting program that would run on the PC. I only tell you that because suddenly all these people at the office are like, this DEC computer or this IBM Series 1 is so slow, I can't get my work done, but when I do it on my PC, I can do it better. So suddenly PCs that were sold by stores, and you couldn't sell the product more than 100 miles from your store to people in homes, were being bought by all these businesses. And it was really just the IBM PC. And of course, a different segue, we can go in on another time what happened with DOS and what happened to the birth of Compaq and HP, different discussion, but that's because IBM wanted to own the operating system. It didn't want to pay Bill Gates. Different segment, but at the time, we started to say, well, wait a minute, what if we could network these PCs together? We could actually maybe get some people at home, and those are things called modems. I remember having a modem that had little ears, and I'd call on the phone. I think it was rotary. And then I would plug it into the ears, and that sound would go back and forth at 300 baud, so it was very slow. But that's how we started thinking about remote from data back and forth. So we weren't really moving pretty well into the informational age at all. But if you flash forward a little bit to 94, what Mosaic or Netscape really presented was this idea that the informational age was beginning. The networking age was upon us. We had Novell. We were able to connect all this stuff. It was a little bit messed up, but we were able to connect information and work together, but we still had the old norms. The guys, when they got their MBAs, would say, we're all going to be in an office, and we're just going to have a bunch of computers there. People aren't going to be able to go somewhere. But let's have a remote office. Let's have a couple remote offices. Let's go get some talent somewhere else, and we can build these hubs doing networking. So it was the beginning of the expansion that occurred, and then when the World Wide Web came out, we suddenly had content, not a lot of applications, other than Mr. Bezos looking at it from the standpoint, instead of saying, I'm going to sell browsers, which we know Explorer destroyed by giving it away for free, what he started to think about was it was real estate. He was going to own the off-ramps off the World Wide Web, and his early beginnings was to build the infrastructure to support those things. We already know the history behind that. So 94 was a very interesting time because we started thinking about the information age differently than what we looked at for the last 100 years before that. And it's been pretty rapid since then. Mobile brought apps. Mobile didn't bring remote work, but it did bring collaboration because people could work. In some respects, it was the beginning of the cloud, because now we had to find a way to get things to devices wherever they were, and the cloud became a great thing. AWS obviously having to build it for themselves, like the Mechanical Turk, like everything else, said, let's beta this internally and then charge on the outside. And their costs for doing it minimized people's overhead by so much, and their efficiency went so much higher. This is my 5th company that I've run everything on AWS, and it's been pretty seamless from the very beginning. Simple, inexpensive, and safe. And then we now have applications. Applications that really work. Applications for everything. Friends, dating, accounting, you name it. We all use them, right? So this was the beginning of that, but we weren't pushing the remote hybrid collaboration. We still were hiring in the same place. 2006, as I mentioned, we started to see the ability to build these cloud technologies, which now brought a lot more opportunity for us to access markets, but also have people work together in potentially different ways. And we started to see a migration of people starting to work from home more, and we started to see some really good things that came out of that. Mental health is being one of them. It suddenly gave you the idea that you could hire somebody that wasn't in town, that was better, more efficient, maybe less expensive, and certainly happier. We certainly saw some of this happen during COVID. In 2019, in October, I was asked to speak at a session about this concept of remote work, way before we had COVID, way before, 5-6 months. And I determined at that point that if you went 26 miles to work every day and back, and paid for parking, and bought lunch, your overhead was tremendous just getting there and back and forth. But you spent 3 weeks a year in your car to go somewhere, to see people, to go do work. And I started to explore, could we use technology to make it better in 2019? So that was one of the roots of this company, Bluescape. The concept was, can you make something that is a great tool, not a nagging tool, a platform that's usable, that changes the way people work and changes their lifestyle, changes their family. So this idea of the spoke and the wheel become 2 different things. And you're starting to see it now, obviously, a lot of you, because I'm seeing a lot of people I haven't seen in 2 years today at this event. A lot of them went to Peter DeSantis' thing. This is a very interesting concept because you can either feel completely isolated as you move into this world, but if there's a way for you to measure, or people to measure the work and the effort you do no matter where you are, it opens up some really good opportunities. We have record issues with health, and in 2019, these were some of the interesting stats I came up with that speech. 50% of the world, in this information age, works more than 45 hours a week. 44% claim they're burned out. This is pre-pandemic. 70% say it's the leading cause of their stress. There's $71 billion lost in managing against depression alone annually. $300 billion on healthcare tied to things like stress. 51% of the workforce is looking for a new job. We keep reading now how everybody's looking for a new job, but this is the revolution that's been going on because we haven't really built culturally the place that says, do not slack anybody after 7 o'clock. That little clicking sound is a driver for you not to be a parent or a partner. And so we're built into this technology that says, oh, it's great, I have my phone, I'm just gonna check something real quick, honey, at the dinner table. And you see it becoming a drag and a magnet and everything else. So we need to use technology to make us more proficient, but we need to do it in a way that's better for the head and better for the family. And the rest of the world is waking up to it very quickly. You know, between Croatia, Dubai, Spain, you move there, no taxes for the first year, tax-free. And you can do all the work that you're probably doing now there. And I'm seeing a lot of my friends and people migrating to places like this because of the opportunity that they get from it. 74%, this is Gartner saying this, the CFO just recently said that 74% of companies plan to shift to permanently to hybrid or remote work. Now, Jamie Dimon, he didn't think so, Morgan Stanley. He says, no, everybody's coming back. But he's having also a record amount of people leave his company. But you've seen Salesforce change. You've seen Amazon change. We haven't quite seen what Apple's doing. It's kind of a mixed message, and they've got a lot of angry employees. But you're starting to see that people say, I kind of like living in the mountains. I kind of like having a house that has 4 bedrooms rather than a condo with 600 square feet. I kind of like that I'm being productive. I like that my company cares about me and likes that they're giving me technology to be proficient. And so a lot of these other places in the world, you can get a much bigger house, a much better place, a more wholesome part of life by moving there. And places like this understand that, and they're taking advantage of it. When I start to think about Bluescape, when I started there over 4 years ago, this concept of bringing all of your work together in one place that is secure, that allows everyone to contribute that should be contributing, measuring that contribution, commenting on change, getting votes either anonymously or live, getting feedback creates demand and happiness from the bottom up as opposed to be told from the top down. Because if I can make an impact in this workspace on an application, if I can put no code in here and make it shareable, any application that isn't shareable, if I could put a full-length movie in here and 2,000 people can watch it at the same time, stop it, start it, make a copy of it, that could help the people not have to go to the movie studio in order to produce movies or TV shows. And it just so happens I cannot name a movie studio that doesn't use Bluescape to produce all their films and TV shows today. And it allowed all these producers around the world to get out of the Warner Brothers parking lot or the Disney plant. They're able to work anywhere because it's in this environment. So the concept is the conference is fine, your Zoom is fine. I frankly don't like to be on Zoom. In fact, the last 10 speeches I've done in my shorts. I feel very uncomfortable right now. The fact is that the conference is a byproduct of the content. And it isn't just drawing pictures on a whiteboard, we should go left, right. It's about things you produced, your presentation, people saying, I don't like blue, I like green, okay? There's something about this ecosystem that we're building that's going to change the way things work. And it already is. I mean, it's pretty phenomenal, some of the stuff that we've been able to do. At the core of it, an average enterprise company has 28 security applications now. I mean, anytime I get an email, I got to go through this thing and tap this and authenticate and everything else. I mean, we're inundated with the fact that people are trying to hack. Me particularly, because I run most of the Department of Defense. I have the highest rating security of any company out there in this space by a long shot. One of my competitors makes all their code, majority of their code in Russia, yet it's used all over the United States. We have to think about security very highly. As we go into the federal business and we start to support all the federal and all the military and all that stuff, this is job one. If you have 10,000 employees or more, you have close to 50 security apps that you're managing too. And that's probably only going to be the increase. So the challenge is not that we have all this technology, we have all this cloud. People like AWS have made it super easy for us to manage to winning these major secure contracts. So the federal business, a lot of that win came because of AWS and continues to. Loneliness, isolation. I think it's more dominant than a lot of us want to admit. We're so used to the old way of being together and being in the kitchen together and having a cup of joe and what did you do this weekend and how did you do it and all that stuff, to suddenly being isolated and being in that same room or that same dining room table or with that dog yipping or your partners being louder than you want them to be or whatever, and you're sort of missing out on this thing, but you're not also getting any gratitude from the organization you're working in. You know, you can only have so many town halls or you can only do so many little company functions to try and make feel better. You need to measure the work and reward the work that these isolated people, these lonely people are feeling. Because depression is real and it's skyrocketed since 19. And I think this loneliness comes to bat when you use platforms that are going to say, hey, Melissa spent more time on this project in the last 2 weeks than anybody. She deserves a gold star because she's in there and we're able to measure the productivity and the activities that are going on. This is an important part of technology. This is a really whiz-bang slick thing. This is really about helping people manage towards this new world because we're not going back, in my opinion. AI. we're starting to see the roots of that grow, but AI is really a function of curated data. It's not a function of saying, hey, all my pictures, 90% of them I'm in a Hawaiian shirt. It's a curation of saying, these environments are the things that make Peter happy. And it's those curated pictures that I want to see and pull together. When you put Bluescape together, you're putting important data into a visual place. So that's the curation. And it starts with curating data, because if you just take everything out of Box or Dropbox or out of the web, you're going to have to filter through all of that stuff to get to the core of the information that's making you do things better. And so we've been working really well with Amazon internally with Bluescape. We're a big vendor to them, and we're utilizing this technology to help them be more proficient as a customer and as a partner. It's mind-blowing, the amount of things that are going on. And you want to know what that really is the stem of what's going on and why there's so many apps inside your company? It started with the venture capitalists. It started with the PE firms. They suddenly realized that if they ran through a process to sell technologies to companies by running the people that are in charge of technology and make the decisions, that they are not going to win. So what they did is they created what we call the freemium to premium. They created a way to enter into a company without any AppSec, without any approvals, and they got somebody to put it on their credit card, and they expensed it. And now you've got 15 different technologies that do the same thing. Meanwhile, IT is trying to standardize on one platform that fits all. And this continues to go on, because if they find a formula that they put $100 million in worth of marketing into an e-commerce engine, they can get a conversion rate of 5 or 6%. This is how Smartsheet became very big. Oh, but guess what? Monday.com figured out how to do it better. And they just all sort of just power against each other. And so I don't know where it all ends up, but I do believe that we need to have a better process by which we pick technologies, because we're not looking at the security holes. We're not knowing where this code is coming. And I have a security-related problem with it. And Amazon has been very helpful about understanding and consolidating those partners based on the right set of information. Amazon will be the accelerator. They still have a third of the cloud business, which is significant. They're large in it. You know, we hear about Oracle, but Oracle's basically put all their PeopleSoft people and all the different application tools on their cloud, and their expansion out of that. IBM Watson, you hear about their hybrid workforce with, I really don't understand. I haven't seen anybody using it. What about Microsoft? What about Microsoft Teams? Lots of companies just standardize on that, because that's going to be your closed opportunity. That's not going to be your open opportunity. That's going to be your costly down the road. And the way AWS is doing, and this is probably what Peter DeSantis is talking about now, is that we're trying to create an open architecture. Companies like CRM, people like Slack, trying to pull it all together so it seamlessly works, but it's best of breed. And I think it's a far better solution set for us to build mental health-based technologies, better AI opportunities within it. And this is the focus of the partnership between Bluescape and AWS today. These are some of the people that have helped us, that Ford's helped us with. I mentioned Ford at the top. I'm proud to say that we were able to deliver their cars in 50% of the time it took them to do a typical car for all their new electric, the Mustang, their Ford 150s. They took a bet on Bluescape to say, we're going to change the way our workers work. And it wasn't in Dearborn. They used to all fly into Michigan from China, from Japan, from Mexico City, from Europe, sit around and do design reviews. They now only come in once every 2 weeks on a Tuesday and disassemble the competitor's car and compare it against theirs. They did their design to structure to manufacturing using our tools along the way, and that collaboration happened out of people's bedrooms. Very interesting. The core company that I talked about, being factory in a room, suddenly pushing this concept that they can build cars without having to have people under the same roof. You're going to see a lot more of this too. They're investing about $13 billion into the electric car market. Interestingly enough, Bill Ford, you know, everybody else got all peeved when California said all electric by 2035. Bill said, let's go. I'm building a battery factory. I'm going to go do all this stuff. And they came out and said, let's go build technology to support this growth mechanism. I mentioned Hollywood before. Used to be, like I said, you had to be in a studio. Hollywood and the presence of our team down there has now, we're doing deals in Europe, in Paris and London for building this content. Mainly because if I put your picture in here or your design in here, if you just go on Bluescape and you go like this, pixelization stays the same. You can look inside a door. You can do things that nobody else can do because we build a technology around this idea of resolution. And then universities, they were spinning almost 2 years ago trying to figure out how to do higher education. This is Penn. And Penn standardized on Bluescape for all their students. And they were able to get them through the courses when they weren't even on campus. So they're able to put their work in. They're able to be evaluated on that work. So it's very good for higher education. I can tell you this. It was 3 years ago, on this day at this conference, I met this guy, Sid Rowe. And he runs the Chime SDK. And I was trying to figure out what the heck he was doing. And then every time I talked to Amazon, they put me on Chime. They wouldn't use Zoom or WebEx or whatever the thing was out there. And it was an interesting experience, to say the least. But we took it with our engineering team and really saw something that was actually better than Zoom and WebEx. And they gave it to us in an SDK. And in typical Amazon fashion, they figured out that you shouldn't be paying a subscription fee for conferencing. Their whole concept was those other guys are charging you $5 for what Amazon's cost is for 10 cents to do this video conferencing. It's essentially thinking that Zoom potentially could become Netscape. Like, this concept of the conference call is part of an ecosystem that people are involved in. And so we took that SDK, we put a pile of engineers on it, and we made it into this slick product inside Bluescape. And you know what we charge for it? Nothing. So if you just sign up next month, you'll be able to sign up for Bluescape for free. You'll be able to have all your conferencing. You can even name your own handle. Peter Jackson's Oval Office. And if you want to drive in some content, you want to save some content, then I'm going to get into your pocketbook. And then we did other integrations. So most of you probably heard of Shotgun, which is an Autodesk product. It got changed to ShotGrid for political reasons. But that was the movie-producing applications that are out there, the media and entertainment space. We connected all that through. We connected Dropbox. We connected Zoom. We connected WebEx. We connected Box. So you can take your conference and put it into the container at the same time that you're viewing content. But that's not all. Next month, 2 weeks from now, Slack. Why is that important? You have a conversation, you hit a button, it brings you to the visual of what you're doing. So you don't have to go, oh, where's the PDF? Where's the file? It's all sitting in the project together, lined up for you. What a brilliant idea. And there's more coming. Collaboration to me is happiness. It's involving. It's listening. It's creating more time for family and adventure. We need to create quality of life for all the people that are in our lives. And we need to make collaboration be like it was thought of. Most people think of the Taliban as evil, but they taught the US something really interesting. They did not have generals that told them what to do. They gave the power of making decisions to the people that were in the Taliban. And the decisions were made on the floor and at the medium level. They were tough decisions they had to make. Meanwhile, we had generals having to approve things on the way down, and we continued to get beaten because they weren't utilizing the people. And that's what your organization needs to do. And the best way to do that is through collaboration and through digital methods like Bluescape. The Renaissance is here. We can make it better. We just have to make the investments. And for the most part, we're seeing record growth in our own company because people are starting to recognize that. Thank you very much. You can come play with the technology at booth 769. I'm open for any questions if you have any. Oh, I got one over here. Good.
So within the vertical space that you are, specifically the entertainment industry, these collaborative environments that you've got, what about the spaces where you mentioned secure environments? That's the area I exist in.
Mm-hmm.
More about it, I guess, later. How do we get around that?
Mm-hmm.
Spaces where people can't get from their home. They still have to come to a place.
Yeah.
But they need to collaborate within that larger environment. Pick a large government agency, say where there's special data people can't get to, that sort of thing. How do they obtain that capability for something like Bluescape? Or is it really just limiting what Bluescape really is if you try to force it into this smaller environment?
It was born out of starts with a C, ends with an A, and there's a vowel in the middle, but I'm not allowed to say it, or I'll get arrested. And the concept was around these rooms that might be cyber warfare or whatever, and it was around a giant collaboration wall or set of. And so we literally have an amazing amount of walls, and we've combined with Dell, and they plug a PC in the back of it, if you will. And if you come to our booth, you'll be able to move it all around. And so people are on their devices putting it up there, and they're in that room working together. So John, is there anything else I missed there? John runs our government agency for us.
How about if they want to bring their own applications to the collaborative environment?
I think in the case of low code, which is where you're now taking the application and putting it inside a Bluescape. So now you're fortifying it. Rupin, that would be a launch in 2022? Yeah. So low code, no code, essentially you take an application and now you don't have to make it into a Google Doc. You take something that was traditionally not that, and now you've made it shareable. Thank you. Excellent. Thank you.